where did the ideas that led to what is now called open source, how did that begin? Who began that?
Well, it actually began with the start of computers, because at that time, software was just passed around between people. And I think it was only like in the late 70s, early 80s, that people started really closing up their software and saying, no, you can never get a look at the source code. You can't change this software, even if it's necessary for you to fix it for your own application. And you can actually blame some of that on Microsoft. They were one of the real pioneers of the proprietary software model.
In the mid-1970s, a group of hackers and computer hobbyists in Silicon Valley formed the Homebrew Computer Club. In the club's January 31st, 1976 newsletter, Bill Gates of the recently formed Microsoft wrote an open letter to the community where he made a point-by-point argument for the relatively new concept of proprietary software. Up to that point, the practice of computer users had been to freely pass around software with not much thought given to its ownership. Known as an open letter to hobbyists, Bill Gates writes, "To me, the most critical thing in the hobby market right now is the lack of good software courses, books, and software itself. Without good software and an owner who understands programming, a hobby computer is wasted. Will quality software be written for the hobby market?" Gates goes on to write, "The feedback we have gotten from the hundreds of people who say they are using BASIC has all been positive. Two surprising things are apparent, however. One, most of these users never bought BASIC, and two, the amount of royalties we have received from sales to hobbyists makes the time spent on Altair BASIC worth less than $2 an hour. Why is this? As the majority of hobbyists must be aware, most of you steal your software. Hardware must be paid for, but software is something to share. Who cares if the people who worked on it get paid? Is this fair? One thing you don't do by stealing software is get back at MITS for some problem you may have had. MITS doesn't make money selling software. One thing you do is prevent good software from being written. Who can afford to do professional work for nothing? What hobbyist can put 3-man years into programming, finding all bugs, documenting his product, and distribute it for free? The fact is, no one besides us has invested a lot of money in hobby software. What about the guys who resell Altair BASIC? Aren't they making money on hobby software? Yes, but those who have been reported to us may lose in the end. They are the ones who give hobbyists a bad name and should be kicked out of any club meeting they show up at. I would appreciate letters from anyone who wants to pay up or has a suggestion or comment. Signed, Bill Gates, General Partner, Microsoft."
And that put me into a moral dilemma, you see, because to get one of the modern computers of the day, which was the early 80s, you would have to get a proprietary operating system. The developers of those systems didn't share with other people. Instead, they tried to control the users, dominate the users, restrict them, saying, if to get this system, you have to sign a promise you won't share with anybody else. And to me, that was essentially a promise to be a bad person, to betray the rest of the world, cut myself off from society, from the cooperating community. And I had already experienced what happened when other people did that to us, when they refused to share with us because they had signed these contracts. And it hurt the whole lab, kept us from doing useful things before. So I just wasn't going to do that. I felt, this is wrong. I am not going to live this way.
Open source is a way for people to collaborate on software without being encumbered by all of the problems of intellectual property, having to negotiate contracts every time you buy a piece of software, have a lot of lawyers involved. In general, we just want to get the software to work, and we want to be able to have people contribute fixes to that, etc. So we sort of sacrifice some of the intellectual property rights and just let the whole world use the software.
Before there could be Linux, there was Richard Stallman and the free software movement.
I mean, think of Richard Stallman as the great philosopher, right? And think of me as the engineer.
Richard Stallman is the founding father of the free software movement. Through his efforts to build the GNU operating system, he created the legal, philosophical, and technological foundation for the free software movement. Without these contributions, it's unlikely that Linux and open source would have evolved into their current forms today.
We had the philosophy that whoever's sitting at the computer should be able to do whatever he wants, and somebody else who was there yesterday shouldn't be controlling what you do today. The crucial thing about GNU is that it's free software. Now, free software refers not to price, but to freedom. So think of free speech, not free beer. The freedoms that I'm talking about are the freedoms to make changes if you want to, or hire somebody else to make changes for you if you're using the software for your business, to redistribute copies, to share with other people, and to make improvements and publish them so that other people can get the benefit of them too. Now, those are the freedoms that distinguish free software from non-free software. These are the freedoms that enable people to form a community. If you don't have all these freedoms, you're being divided and dominated by somebody. If we put the software in the public domain, somebody else would be able to make a little bit of changes and turn that into a proprietary software package, which means that the users would be running our software, but they wouldn't have freedom to cooperate and share. To prevent that, we use a technique called copyleft. The idea of copyleft is that it's copyright flipped over. And what we do is we say, this software is copyrighted, and we, the authors, give you permission to redistribute copies. So we give you permission to change it. We give you permission to add to it. But when you redistribute it, it has to be under these terms, no more and no less. So that whoever gets it from you also gets the freedom to cooperate with other people if he wants to. And then in this way, everywhere the software goes, the freedom goes too. And it becomes an inalienable right to cooperate with other people and form a community.